The Shroud of Turin is this amazing relic. At bottom, it's a piece of cloth. It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man, and the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has stood at the center of one of history's greatest mysteries. Is it truly the burial cloth of Jesus Christ? Or is it an elaborate medieval forgery? Believers see it as sacred evidence of the resurrection, while skeptics dismiss it as a clever fake. But everything changed when modern scientists extracted DNA, analyzed microscopic particles, and examined the cloth with cutting-edge technology. What they uncovered challenged both faith and skepticism, opening a mystery that science still cannot fully explain. The DNA investigation that changed everything. One of the most important scientific investigations into the Shroud of Turin focused on the microscopic biological material trapped within its ancient linen fibers. Researchers were not attempting to identify the DNA of Jesus, since science has no reference DNA for such a comparison. Instead, their goal was to reconstruct the cloth's history by identifying where it had traveled and the people who had come into contact with it over the centuries. Working under strict contamination controls, scientists collected tiny samples of dust, pollen, skin cells, and other organic material embedded deep within the fabric. These samples were analyzed in ultra-clean laboratories using next-generation DNA sequencing, with a focus on mitochondrial DNA because it survives much longer than nuclear DNA and provides valuable clues about ancient ancestry and geographic origins. The results were unexpected. Rather than finding one dominant genetic signature, researchers uncovered DNA linked to multiple populations around the world. Genetic markers pointed to the Middle East, including modern-day Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. European DNA was also present, which was expected given the Shroud's long history in Europe. More surprisingly, scientists identified genetic traces associated with North and East Africa, as well as South and East Asia, including India and China. Some skeptics suggested the findings were simply the result of contamination from centuries of handling. However, the overall genetic pattern closely matched the ancient trade routes connecting Jerusalem, Edessa, Constantinople, Greece, France, and Italy. If the Shroud truly traveled along these routes, merchants, pilgrims, rulers, and worshippers would have unknowingly left microscopic traces behind. Rather than representing a single individual, the DNA became a remarkable biological record of the cloth's long journey, preserving centuries of human contact within its ancient fibers. The cloth that defied science. Few religious artifacts have inspired as much fascination and controversy as the Shroud of Turin. Measuring more than 14 feet in length, this ancient linen cloth bears the faint image of a man whose wounds appear strikingly consistent with crucifixion. For millions of Christians, it is revered as the burial cloth that wrapped Jesus Christ after his crucifixion. Skeptics, however, believe it is an elaborate medieval forgery, carefully crafted to inspire faith and attract pilgrims. For more than 6 centuries, historians, theologians, and scientists have debated its true origin. Yet no theory has managed to end the controversy. Everything began to change with the rise of modern forensic science. Instead of treating the shroud as a religious relic, researchers approached it like evidence from an unsolved crime. Every thread, stain, and microscopic particle became a potential clue. Scientists analyzed blood residues, pollen grains, textile fibers, dust, and biological material using technologies unimaginable just a few decades ago. High-resolution imaging, spectroscopy, advanced DNA sequencing, and molecular X-ray analysis allowed researchers to examine the cloth in extraordinary detail. The image itself proved equally mysterious. When photographed in 1898, the negative revealed a remarkably lifelike, positive image of a man's face, something no medieval artist could have intentionally created centuries before photography existed. Even more puzzling, the image contains no brush strokes, pigments, or dyes. The discoloration exists only on the outermost surface of the linen fibers without penetrating the threads beneath. Unlike any known painting or artistic technique, The shroud behaves more like a scientific anomaly than a work of art. The deeper scientists investigated, the more mysterious the cloth became, transforming it from a religious relic into one of history's greatest unsolved scientific puzzles. Blood, pollen, and the evidence hidden in the fibers. While DNA analysis revealed an extraordinary history of the Shroud of Turin's travels, it was only part of the mystery. Scientists next focused on two other crucial pieces of evidence hidden within the ancient linen: microscopic pollen grains and the reddish bloodstains that had fueled debate for centuries. Together, these tiny traces offered some of the strongest forensic clues about where the cloth had been and what happened to the man whose image appeared upon it. To forensic scientists, pollen functions like a geographic fingerprint. Since every plant species grows in specific environments, its pollen can remain preserved for centuries, allowing researchers to trace where an object has traveled. By examining pollen trapped deep within the shroud's fibers, scientists identified dozens of plant species. Some came from Europe, which was expected given the cloth's documented history. More remarkably, many originated from the Middle East, particularly the region surrounding Jerusalem. Researchers also discovered large amounts of pollen from thorny desert plants that bloom around Jerusalem during the spring. Some experts believe these plants closely resemble those that could have been used to weave the biblical crown of thorns, strengthening the possibility that the cloth spent time in the Holy Land long before appearing in medieval Europe. The wound patterns further matched what modern medicine knows about Roman crucifixion. Blood flows were consistent with a body hanging on a cross, with injuries covering the back, shoulders, scalp, wrists, feet, and side. The nails appeared to pierce the wrists instead of the palms, matching archaeological evidence of Roman execution methods. Combined with the pollen evidence, these findings created an astonishing forensic portrait of a man who endured extraordinary torture, leaving behind one of history's most enduring and scientifically intriguing mysteries. Can science ever explain the shroud? Despite decades of scientific investigation, one question continues to overshadow every other mystery surrounding the Shroud of Turin. How was its image created? Unlike a painting, the image contains no visible pigments, ink, or dye. Under powerful microscopes, researchers discovered that the discoloration exists only on the outermost surface of the linen fibers, affecting a layer thinner than a fraction of a human hair. The image does not penetrate the threads like paint would. Instead, it appears as an extremely shallow chemical alteration, unlike anything seen in conventional artwork. The mystery deepened when NASA scientists used image processing technology to study the shroud. They discovered that the image contains accurate three-dimensional information. The brightness of different areas corresponds to the distance between the cloth and the body it covered, allowing computers to generate a realistic 3D model. No known medieval painting or artistic technique possesses this property. Over the years, researchers have attempted to reproduce the image using heat, chemicals, pigments, lasers, radiation, and other methods. While some experiments produced limited similarities, none successfully recreated all of the shroud's unique characteristics. Another major controversy centers on the famous 1988 radiocarbon dating. At the time, laboratories concluded that the linen dated to the Middle Ages, supporting the theory that the shroud was a medieval forgery. However, later studies challenged those results after researchers discovered that the tested sample came from a repaired corner of the cloth rather than its original fabric. That section had been heavily handled over the centuries and contained cotton fibers woven into the linen during medieval repairs, potentially producing a much younger date. For more than a century, the Shroud of Turin has challenged historians, scientists, and believers alike. Every new discovery seems to answer one question while creating several more. DNA, pollen, blood chemistry, forensic evidence, and advanced imaging have all added remarkable pieces to the puzzle. Yet the complete picture remains elusive. Whether you see the shroud as sacred history, an extraordinary archaeological artifact, or one of science's greatest unsolved mysteries, its story continues to captivate the world. If you enjoyed this fascinating journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible explorations into history, science, and the mysteries that continue to shape our understanding of the past.